Hello and welcome to today's Securing the Organization EcoCast event produced by Actual Tech Media. And today we'll hear from SolarWinds, KnowBe4, Duo Security, and Rapid7. We're starting here just a few minutes early because we have a great keynote interview lined up for you today with Mr. Ned Bellavance, and it's about 15 minutes long, and I wanted to make sure that we stay on schedule as much as possible. So we are kicking off, like I said, a few minutes early, so thank you for joining us just a few minutes before the top of the hour. Now, if you haven't been on one of these events before, you should know that we at Actual Tech Media created the EcoCast and MegaCast event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology solutions, to help you to learn as much as possible and to help you do it quickly and efficiently all in one place. I was an IT manager. I was a system and network administrator myself. I remember having to ask for permission to take the day off and drive downtown to the convention center to some convention where I was hoping I could learn about new technology solutions and get all my questions answered. And the great thing about this event is that you can do it from the comfort of your office, maybe your home office, if you're lucky enough to be working from home. So we've got a great event lined up for you. You're going to learn all about securing your IT organization, which is a huge challenge for companies today. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping that we first need to cover. You should know that we have prizes. We have 3 Amazon $500 gift cards to give out on today's event. I'll talk more about the requirements to be eligible for those prize drawings in just a moment. Questions. We want you to use the questions box as much as you'd like. Ask as many questions as you'd like, and we will be doing our best to answer all of those questions. If you're not familiar with the questions box, I can actually make it move around a little bit right there. So make sure you check out the questions box. You can resize the questions box to make it fit into your browser window. You can resize the slides window as well. I encourage you to make it as large as possible. And you can even tweet directly from the console using the Twitter icon down at the bottom of the screen. So that's the Twitter box. I'll get it off the screen there for you. I'll minimize it, but you can tweet directly from the console, and it will automatically append the hashtag for today's event. We want this to be a social event. I'll be tweeting about the event. I'll be retweeting just about anybody who tweets about the event and following you as well. And that hashtag, like I said, will be automatically appended if you use the Twitter icon on your console. Resources, we have handouts, so make sure you check out those handouts. They are right next to the questions and answers box there. You see the word handouts, and you can download a handout that's been selected by each of today's presenters. There's also some links in there for more information. Like I said, we've got 3 $500 gift cards to give out on today's event. You must be present on the live event to be eligible for the prize drawings. There are some more prize terms and conditions that you should know about. You can find the link to that in the handouts box, or just visit events.actualtechmedia.com. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media if you are selected. Through the MegaCast and EcoCast event series, we've given thousands of dollars to charity. Thank you to generous attendees. So if you win and you can't accept the prize, or you just like to help someone less fortunate, we would love to help you do that. So the hashtag for today's event is SecurityEcoCast. I'll be tweeting about the event on Twitter. You can follow Actual Tech Media, and I am David M. Davis on Twitter as well. Now, we've been doing a lot lately on LinkedIn, so make sure you follow Actual Tech Media on LinkedIn. You can access our LinkedIn page with the LinkedIn icon that's on the top right-hand side of your audience console. So just click on that now. It'll take you to our LinkedIn page and click follow. We also have YouTube channels, and we have a 10 on Tech podcast that you can subscribe to get the latest and greatest enterprise technology interviews. So you can find that over in the iTunes store. So now I'd like to do just one quick poll question before we kick off our interview today. And the poll question is on the screen, and it says, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new security solutions for your company? And so I'll leave this up for just a minute basically here we're just trying to, figure out, I know most companies out there, they always need more security, right? We always need more protection from malicious attackers and from the bad guys. And we're constantly being bombarded. And it's tough. It's tough to stay ahead of that game, to stay ahead of the bad guys. So we're just curious what your time frame is for new solutions at your company. I'll leave that up for one more minute because we are about to kick it off with our keynote interview. And now it's time to kick off today's Securing the Organization EcoCast, again, brought to you by SolarWinds, KnowBe4, Duo Security, and Rapid7. Thank you so much for joining us on today's special event. And it is time for our keynote interview with Mr. Ned Bellavance. Here we go.
To be joined by Mr. Ned Bellavance, Microsoft MVP, Pluralsight author, founder of Ned in the Cloud. Ned, thanks so much for being on the event today.
Thanks for having me, David. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, I know of you from being a Tech Field Day delegate. I was a delegate as well. That's a great series of events. Also, I know you from Pluralsight, of course. You've got a great series of Pluralsight courses, Azure security. Tell us for just a second some of your Pluralsight courses.
I've been doing a bunch on Azure based off of the Microsoft partnership that's going on with Pluralsight right now, but I've also dived into Terraform. So I have 2 courses on Terraform from HashiCorp and 2 courses on their Vault product as well, which ties in well to the whole security theme. If you want to keep your secrets safe, putting them in HashiCorp Vault is not a terrible idea.
Okay, very nice. I need to learn more about Terraform and Vault myself, so actually I need to put those on my must-watch list. And then, of course, I originally met you back when you were a director of cloud something or other at a large consulting organization. So I know you've got many years of industry experience talking to real companies out there.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
That is true, and companies are always struggling with the topic of security, especially. A lot of the times, IT ops and security are at loggerheads, as well as security battling their end users, and that's in part because end users need to be educated on why security is important and what to look out for. In fact, the number one reason why most breaches happen is not some sophisticated, crazy attack where someone's standing in front of 18 screens and they got a worm crawling across it like in a movie. It just comes down to simple phishing attacks and compromising someone's credentials and then escalating from there because maybe a domain admin logged into their workstation at some point, grab those credentials, and once you have that, you kind of have the keys to the castle. So what we really need to focus on, the number one thing when it comes to security, is educating end users on how to use their systems and the browser safely and reliably without letting these intrusions in.
Yeah, you make a great point. I mean, end user education is key. I've heard that, as being the company's first line of defense, when it comes to protecting the company's, crown jewels. Something we've been doing at Actual Tech Media that's kind of been a little painful, but it's something that, you just have to do these days is implementing two-factor authentication on everything, so it seems like every time I log in, I have to get my authenticator app or a text message on my phone or whatever. It's a large inconvenience, I should say, but it's something that we just have to do because we've been, unfortunately attacked in the past. And so, I mean, how key is identity in authentication when it comes to security?
Well, yeah, when it comes to security, identity is really everything. And identity is kind of like the new oil or the new black, whatever you want to call it. Multi-factor authentication plays a part of that because the password, for the most part, is dead or should be. People are bad at remembering long, complex passwords, so they'll reuse the same one. Or if they don't have to use a long one, they'll use a short one that's easily cracked. So having that second level of authentication where it sends a text message or pings you on an app or something helps prove that you are who you say you are and that it's not someone else who's hacking your account. The nice thing is, back in the old days, you had to have an RSA key fob, and your company had to pay probably a ridiculous amount of money to RSA to have that whole service turned on and usable. Nowadays, MFA is a tick box for most services. It's baked in, so you don't have to lay out a whole bunch of money to get that additional level of authentication. In the same way, identity is huge across all the cloud spaces too. I mean, Azure has Azure Active Directory, which provides the identity for things within Azure, as well as the way that you authenticate to it. AWS has IAM, or Identity Access Management, where every object has a role and ID associated with it. So being able to prove who you are, or if you're an application, what you are, and that you should have a level of access is really important. So if something gets compromised, it's relatively easy to turn off access for that particular object and stop the attack from moving any further.
Absolutely, yeah. So two-factor authentication, I mean, the principle of least privilege, making sure that no one has more access than they should have. And then I've always heard of security as being, you don't want the egg security. You don't want the hard outer shell and the soft gooey center, because once they get through the hard outer shell, they're in. You want the onion security with multiple layers that they have to get through. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know about the onion. That's kind of a stinky way to go about it. I relate it more to a jawbreaker. So I like to go with, you might have an M&M security now, which has the hard candy shell, but on the inside it's ooey gooey chocolate. You want your security to be more like a jawbreaker. It's just layer after layer of hard security. It starts with maybe your firewalls on the outside, but it can't stop there. You have to be segmenting your environment into smaller zones. And what's the smallest possible zone? Well, it's probably the application running on a container or running on a virtual machine. So even down at the virtual machine layer, you want to have some micro-segmentation in place that says, you can only talk to this other thing, and this other thing can only talk to you. So in the case of maybe an application and a database server, you can set up the database server to only accept traffic from that application server, and vice versa. And then the authentication should be some sort of mutual TLS, which is getting a lot easier now. There's a bunch of products out there that kind of transparently set up that TLS tunnel for you. So you know that it's secure, authenticated, and that it's also encrypted communication. So I think, the more layers you can put in, probably the better. But at the same time, it can't be so onerous that no one's going to put it in place, which is why you need some sort of policy-driven or intent-driven security where you can say, this is what I want. Go make it happen at all these different layers, as opposed to me trying to tinker down through each individual one. And I'm probably going to get lost somewhere in there or miss a setting. So automation is key in actually accomplishing defense in depth.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, because IT data centers and networks are just so complicated these days, and there's so many pieces to them. Trying to secure them all manually is just impossible and error fraught, I'm sure. Yeah. So intent driven, you said.
Yes. I mean, that's a term that people started using in the industry, especially around networking, intent-driven networking. But it's really just using that declarative model. Let me declare in a document what I want, and then you, machine or program, whatever it is, I feed that to you, and you go make it happen in a way that makes sense. But I don't need to worry about the bits and bytes of it. I just tell you what my high-level plan is, and you make sure it happens regardless of the environment that it's being deployed in.
Okay, nice. And I know a lot of companies, they struggle with just visibility, like what's going on the network. And, you can't secure what you can't see. Kind of back to the old adage, you can't control what you can't measure, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you can't patch what you don't know about. So that's one thing, is if you just don't know that these systems exist, there's no possibility that you're going to properly patch them. So having visibility into what's actually running in your environment is huge. The next thing is you can't block what you can't see. So you have to have good visibility into the traffic that's coming into your network, and some sort of way of detecting whether or not this is anomalous behavior or is this normal behavior. And there's been a lot of talk about AI and machine learning, and products are making strides in that direction, but we probably still have a long way to go to get that detection more fine-tuned. So it still needs that human element that's watching the traffic, or at least paging through it on a regular basis. There's been a lot of talk about, blocking 0-day type stuff by looking for anomalous behavior, but even those, you might not know the anomalous behavior. So part of monitoring and logging is not just detecting it when it initially happens, but detecting it at least within a reasonable time frame. I know the usual attacker sits in an environment for 90 days to over a year before they're detected. And that's just because the proper monitoring and logging isn't in place. If you had it in place, you might not detect that initial intrusion, but maybe you can root them out in a day or two, which means they've done a lot less damage. They can't move exabytes out of your environment, maybe just a few gigs.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, 90 days, that's scary, that time frame that they...
Yeah.
And I finally thought of the old adage, you can't manage what you can't measure. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, another topic here. I mean, a lot of companies are moving their monolithic applications to these more micro-segmented applications, and these cloud-native applications, and or microservices applications. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Right.
And they're doing their own, in-house development. I mean, what do they need to think about when it comes to security?
They need to think about what's called shifting left with security. So a lot of the development and deployment is done through what's called a CI/CD pipeline, or continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline. The idea of being a coder commits, and then a pipeline kicks off, and at the end of that pipeline, you have production ready code to deploy. But if you wait until if you let security only be involved at that very end, maybe they vet it before it goes out the door, then they might have to pump the brakes on your deployment because, you left this giant security hole, or, the way this was coded doesn't meet our standards and practices. And so that has to go back into the development cycle, and a coder has to work on it again, and you've slowed down the whole process. If instead you bring your security team in at the very beginning of that pipeline, during the design phase, when you're figuring out features, and have them advise the people developing the application on proper security and techniques, then you actually end up accelerating your deployment. There's a whole study on this that was done by a number of different DevOps practitioners, and it's published in the book Accelerate. They also do the State of the DevOps report every year. And it really saw that anybody who brings security in earlier has more secure code and actually has a faster pipeline because they're catching these bugs early, as opposed to ones that wait until the end for security review.
I read that book, Accelerate. Yeah, that's a cool book with tons of statistics in it. So you make a great point here. So security shouldn't be an afterthought, I think, which is a big complaint of, security practitioners, is they're always brought in like, hey, we put in this new application and did all this stuff. Now come in and check it to see if it's secure. And It's like, well, you should have called us, when you were scoping the thing out, right? And so that's also true for developing applications, is what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, get the security team involved, because then it's not adversarial either. They feel like they're part of the process throughout. And that ends up with just having better teamwork between different teams. So your developers and your IT ops, that was DevOps, trying to put those together. Now there's what they're calling DevSecOps, which is trying to bring that security team into the process too. So everybody feels like they're at the table and they have a say before decisions are made. And that just seems to improve overall company culture, as well as the end product of what's pushed out the door.
Yeah. Great points. I mean, I remember when I was an IT manager, one of the biggest complaints was I would get a call from some business unit. We bought an application and a server and some PCs, and we can't make it work. Can you come down and fix it for us? And it's like, well, why didn't you call us, when you were thinking about buying this thing? So yeah, great points. Great points on security, Ned, as usual. It's always great to have you on these events. Always great to chat with you. Before we go, I want you to remind everyone what you're doing these days. I think you've got a podcast, you've got courses, you've got a website. I think you do the Twitter thing. Tell us about it.
Got a couple things going on. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Ned1313. I have courses on Pluralsight that we talked about. I'm running a podcast called Day 2 Cloud with the Packet Pushers, which is all about what happens day 2 of running in the cloud versus what your initial plan. As well as I have a book coming out soon on the Azure Kubernetes service, so keep an eye out for that. So I got all that going on, and probably a little bit more that I'm forgetting.
Nice. I didn't know about the book. I look forward to reading that. So congrats, early congrats on that. Ned, it's great to have you on the event today. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks, David.
Great interview with Mr. Ned Balavance, and now it's time to kick off today's presentation, or our first presentation on the Security EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Greg Kras, Success Officer at KnowBe4. Greg, are you there?
I am.
Thanks for being on the event today, Greg. Thanks for kicking it off. Take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So really quickly, we're going to go through a few slides, but I actually like to spend most of the time going through product demo. So we'll skip over, my name, Chief Success Officer, Chief Product Officer. I run the KnowBe4 product line. And let's talk a little bit about what KnowBe4 does and how we do what we do. We've got over 28,000 customers across many different verticals. We started doing this back in 2010. Kind of an important point is, how did we get into this business? Is founder and several people, myself included, came from the security space making antivirus tools, saw that there was a big problem that had to do with the fact that technology solutions only work up to a point. The people are a big part of the security framework. It is really an area where it's much easier now to go after the soft people, soft targets, rather than technology. So that's why we started doing what it is that we do. And we like to say that we're certainly the biggest and the best out there at doing that. And how is it that all works? Has to come down to statistics. Obviously, you can't actually manage what you can't measure. So let's start with some measurements. One of the first things that we do whenever we roll out the platform is we push people through a baseline training. And that training will give you an idea of, a baseline phishing campaign. And that'll give you an idea of what type of failure rates you have in your organization. So you'll see here that first bar on this graph is 27%. So 1 in 4, actually more than that, are going to fall for a simulated phishing attack. And when you start going through the program, you'll see that within the first 3 months, that's cut in half. You're down to 13% or better. And even more important is that over time, it actually continues to get better. This is the difference between what we do and the old-fashioned annual awareness training. That's obviously, this is different, the way that it works. You're constantly reminding people how to do things. Security awareness training isn't so much just training. It's also a cultural shift. It is getting people to be involved and responsible for what's happening in the way that they treat security incidents and when they're presented with a problem. So how does that all work? I will start doing a product demo and actually show you how we do this. So what you're going to be seeing here is the dashboard view, as if you were an admin for the KnowBe4 platform. And when you first log in, you're going to get to the dashboard that shows you the overall risk score for the organization. So the risk score is powered by one of our AI technologies, our virtual risk officer. And this is going to be taking in several different factors about your users in your organization to come up with a combined score for risk. Obviously, you want that to go down as time goes on. But we're looking at not just the phishing results, but we're looking at what training they've done, the frequency of the training, where they are within the organization, how many people report to them, have they been in breaches, their behaviors on the simulations. We're pulling together lots of different information to come up with this risk score so that you can get a better view rather than just a person's propensity to click. Down below that, you get a little bit more information about the individual phishing tests, and you can do some benchmark comparisons to see how you stack up to others in your same industry or size. Down below that, you'll see the reports on users reporting phishing emails. We have a plugin that's available for Outlook, Office 365, G Suite, Lotus Notes, where people can report what they think to be phishing emails. If it's one of our simulations, it gets rid of the message, gives them a congratulations, and scores it. If it's not, it forwards it along to your information or your whatever SOC team that you may have that deals with those messages. And we actually have software called Phishing for dealing with those as well. And a little bit further down, you can see the results of your training campaign. So as a new user of the console, one of the first things we always push people to use is a tool we call ASAP, the Automated Security Awareness Program, so that you can get the full effect. I mentioned earlier, it's not just about phishing the users and training the users. It's part of a program. And a lot of organizations don't have an established program, so we built this into the platform as a way to create that program. So you'll actually see here, this is actually the results of filling out about a 15-question survey that gives us some ideas about your organization and what you want to be achieving. And the results are all of these different steps that you can follow in order to put a whole program in place for your organization. You'll see it even starts off with just start engaging your stakeholders. It's got nothing to do with the platform. It's actually about getting people aware to what you're going to be doing in the organization. A good awareness program needs to actually have people involved from the top down so that people understand that it's important and that they're actually part of the solution. So this walks you through everything. Once you've gotten through the beginning parts of this program, you're going to need to get your users into the platform so we know who we're dealing with. And for that, we actually have a few different ways. You can import them through a CSV. We have an Active Directory integration option so that you can automatically synchronize users as they come on. There's a couple different ways you can get users into the console. Once you have users in the console, you can see details about the user. I'll drill into one as an example here. So this is Fritz. And Fritz, you'll see here on the right all of the details that can come from Active Directory or from the CSV imports. And then you see the risk score for Fritz over time. And as I mentioned earlier, the risk score is several different data points pulled together into the AI model. And you can see we have the booster, which is a value that the admin can set. We have exposure, which is breach information, job function, what they're doing out there in the organization, their behavior and their training. And all of that is graphed out so you can see that over time. And then there's further data about the individual phishing tests, the training, and down at the bottom there's a whole timeline of all the events that have occurred with an individual user. While we're in here, actually, another thing I want to point out is groups. Groups are really important concepts within the KnowBe4 platform. It's so important that there's actually 3 different types of groups. We have groups like this with a little grayed out Windows logo. That means it's an ad hoc group. You've just created people, put them together into a group, nothing particularly fancy. If it's got a little Windows logo, it's being synchronized through Active Directory, so you can move those groups over directly. And if you add people to accounting in your AD, they show up in the accounting group here in the platform. So that's very important. And then the last type of group, probably the most exciting one, are what we call smart groups. So let's drill down into a smart group. And you can see that smart groups are based off of criteria. So this is an example of one where we're looking for users that have never completed CEO fraud training and they're a member of a management group. This is really nice because the moment they were to complete any of the CEO fraud training, they would immediately fall out of the group because they no longer meet the criteria. So some of those criteria can be about how many failures they've had, what training they have done, what training they haven't done. It allows you to automate your workflows in the organization so that perhaps you have an annual training requirement for PCI compliance. Rather than pushing that down everybody's throat in January, particularly the poor guys that started in October and just finished it, just do it on their anniversary date of the last time they did it. And without having to log in and set that up, you can create a smart group that just looks for anybody that hasn't done PCI training in the last 1 year, and you're done. So smart groups are a really nice way to automate things in the platform. And everything you do in the platform, you're going to be doing it to groups. So that's why we do it this way. So let's drill into some of the phishing options. So when you do phishing, we do it by campaign. You can do either one-time phishing campaigns or you can do ongoing campaigns. I could show you a sample of what an individual campaign looks like. So we'll drill down into this campaign here. You get some overview of the types of failures you've had, times of failures, geographical information about the people that are failing. You can go in further than that if you like, and actually see the types of failures that we track. We have clicking, obviously clicking on links and emails. Replies. Very common tactic out there is that the threat actors know that if they have attachments and they have links, filters are going to catch them. But when they don't have any of that, a lot of filters don't stop the messages. But this is how CEO fraud happens. This is how people coerce your users into saying or revealing information that you shouldn't do. So we actually track replies on messages so that we can come back to the admin and show this is what your users are doing when they're being asked interesting things via email. We have attachments open, so these are going to be Office documents, PDFs, HTML files. Macro enabled, those are going to be, again, Office documents. Data entered. Once a person clicks on something or opens an attachment and clicks a link inside the attachment, they end up on a web page. We call that a landing page. And on those landing pages, some of those look like authentication portals. And if they enter data, we will capture that they entered data. We won't actually keep that data, but we'll capture that they did it. And that'll be another failure. And if they're running a legacy browser, we'll actually be able to see if there's any vulnerable plugins on that browser. And this last statistic here is, have those people been reporting the simulated messages? So setting up a phishing campaign is extremely easy. You need to know who you're going to phish, and that's going to be one of those groups that I talked about earlier. You need to know what you're going to phish them with, and that's done through email templates. You can either make your own templates from scratch, or you can use one of our built-in templates. So in our system templates, we currently have 3,500 templates, and we are constantly rolling those out, putting new ones in there. In fact, there's a category which is reported phishes of the week, which are literally the phishing emails that have been seen in the last week in the wild. You can look at one of these templates here, get a feel for what that is, and say, oh, there's a nice Slack one that's out there. And if you wanted to, you could use it as is, or you could go in and modify that template. So if I wanted to say here, let's use whoever gets its first name. We can put that in there, and we can make other changes about what happens when a person clicks on it. So I'll make a small change here, and we'll save this off. Now that I've modified this template, I can preview it. You can see that it's put a name inside of the template right here. And then if a person were to click on it, they'd get presented with some sort of a landing page. This landing page is an example of our social engineering indicators landing page, or SEI. And it actually shows the end user the email that they just received that they failed on, as well as highlighting all of the red flags in that message that they should have caught. So it turns every single one of those templates into a learning experience for the end user. And it takes all of that effort off of the admin because it's automatic. It's all built into the templates. Since it's showing off landing pages, I can show you some of the other ones we have. We have, again, it's all done through templates. You can either make your own or use existing ones. There's quite a few built in. Some of them are very simple, like the one I showed you a moment ago. Other ones are designed to actually look more like a commercial landing page. So here's a fairly convincing LinkedIn landing page to see if a user is just going to fall for that type of a phish. So you're going to do that phishing. We recommend that you do phishing on a monthly basis. Some organizations say that they can only phish quarterly. Not very effective when you only phish quarterly. What we recommend in those scenarios, if there's some reason you can only phish quarterly, is what about people that fail? Can you phish them more frequently? Usually the answer to that is yes, and that's where those smart groups come in very handy, because you can look for people that have had failures and then have them on more frequent phishing campaigns until they stop clicking, and then they just get on to the quarterly basis. So again, it's nice to be able to automate that process. Training is another obviously very important part of a security awareness program, and in order to talk about training, let's talk about content. So we have so much content that we have a whole section in the console called the Mod Store, which is short for Module Store. And right now we're at 948 pieces of content. Certainly the largest and most up-to-date catalog of content on the internet. And how we do that is we have not only the content that we create on a regular basis, but we have several companies that we partner with, several that are now wholly owned subsidiaries, and they create content for us that goes into the mod store so that it's always current, and there's lots of different looks and feels. If you look at this page here, you can see I've got a game, I've got interactive training module, I've got a video module, and one thing you'll notice is these all look a little different. That's actually because intentionally we try to make our content from our different providers. They all have their own style. So Popcorn Training, they're based out of South Africa. Their training is it's very fun, lighthearted security awareness training. Another company, Exploki, is based out of Germany, and their training is extremely, I want to say dry, but it's very to the point type of training, and it's shorter video modules. Another example would be El Pescador. They're based out of Brazil, and they also use an animated style to their training. Twist and Shout, partner of ours in the UK, we started doing episodic video training where we've actually have 12 episodes, so it works out nicely for an annual training campaign. And it follows a whole story arc, and every one of the episodes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes long, gets a person familiar with awareness training, while at the same time being something that's rather interesting to watch. So lots of different types of content, lots of different styles to it, and it covers a whole gambit of different topics. So you can see the categories of content. We have targeted training for specific roles, and then these are the types of topics that you may go into. So if you, per se, you wanted to do GDPR training, you could drill into that to see we have 29 different pieces of content that cover that. You can drill in as the admin and look at the content. And, of course, not everything is just in English. In fact, we have quite a few different languages that are available. So, for example, GDPR training is available in all those different languages. And if you're looking for training that's available in specific languages, you can also scroll down and filter through all of the languages that we have the training available in. So ModStore is something I could spend hours talking about. I have minutes, so that's as much as I can show of that. Once you've picked the training that you're going to push your users through, it's all done through campaigns similar to phishing. You set up the phishing campaigns, you set up your training campaigns. Once you set up a training campaign, you can see how that's going. So you can see this particular training campaign covers GDPR and employee policy. You can upload your own PDFs into the platform. If you also have your own training, if you have your own SCORM or videos that you want to put into the platform, you can upload as much of that as you like, so you can push people through that training as well. So many organizations actually start using the platform as their learning management system, or LMS, because it's all in one place. I got a couple more minutes, so I'll touch a few other highlights that are available in the console. We have our phishing capability, where you can do voice-based phishing. So phone numbers are entered in for all of the users. It can come over from the Active Directory, and the system will actually call them. And we're looking to see if users fall for those types of attacks, if they're entering numbers in on the phone calls. We have a USB drive test where we don't give you the USB drives, but we give you all of the files to put on a thumb drive. Download these, put them on a thumb drive, leave them laying around, and see who falls for it. And you can see the details of what happens if they open any of those files that are on there. And move over here to some of the other areas. We have Ada. This is another AI platform feature. This is our artificial intelligence-driven agent. And the way this works is, actually, I'll just show it to you. When you create a campaign, you don't really get a lot of options. You go, this is a sample, and you say who you want to go after. Again, it's all based on groups. And then you give it a couple rules of engagement. Can it do texting, and can it do voice calls? Once you set that, the system takes it from there. It can actually use multi-pronged attack vectors to get to people. So you may get a notification that you have a dentist appointment coming up, followed up with a text message that says, hey, you got an email about a dentist appointment. And it's kind of interesting to see how many people fall for those types of attacks. Last thing I didn't get a chance to show earlier is reporting. Obviously, it's a big thing that you got to be able to actually report on what's going on in the platform. And for that reason, we have a whole section of dedicated reporting called our advanced reporting. And inside of the advanced reporting, you can do individual reports as well as group type reports. So we have these report cards, which are actually kind of nice, where you can pick any one of the groups that you have and see some information about how that group has been performing. So For example, the accounting group, you can see the risk score over time, phish-prone percentage, what types of failures, what training they've done. So there's actually over 70 different reports that are built into the advanced reporting. And if for whatever reason there's more that you want, all of that reporting information is available through an API. So you can pull it into your own business intelligence and look at that. So there's several different APIs that are actually available for interacting with the Know-Before platform. We'll go back to the console here. Let's see, what else we got time for here? Well, I'll talk a little bit about how the subscriptions work here. So I'll actually go back over to my slide deck for a moment. I have one more slide that talks about how it's done. We license everything per user per year. So if you've got, say, 500 users in your organization, it usually comes out to about $15, $16 per user per year for our common platform, let's say our platinum subscription level. And you can see here on this matrix what those different subscription levels have built into them. So at all levels, you get unlimited phishing. And once you start getting into gold, you get access to more content, access to the phishing capabilities. Once you get up to platinum, you get the smart groups, you get security roles if you want to actually delegate rights in the platform. And then when you get to diamond, you have access to all of the content that's in there. And as we add additional publishers, that's where we put them, is underneath the diamond content level. So that's what I've got here. Any questions you got, David?
Sorry, Greg, I was on mute. Yes, sir, we do have questions for you from the audience there. So while we do that, I'm going to just pop up this poll question, and we can just leave that up while we do our Q&A. So the question for the audience is, what additional information would you like about the Know-Before solution? And this is a multi-select question. And Greg, by the way, I love seeing the live demo. Thank you for taking time to actually show the product and see all the cool features of it. I know the audience appreciates that, and I do too. Let's see, first question that came in, Donald was asking, what level was the $15 user per month? Is that back on your chart that we just took away?
Oh, that's fine. I can answer that one. That would be the platinum subscription level at the 500 user mark. Obviously, there's different price points depending on the size of your organization and the subscription level. But just as a finger in the air, that's usually the number I say. So for the platinum, it's about $15, $16 per user per year.
Okay, nice. And another question here, Sean is asking, how often do you update the content in the library?
Oh gosh, that's literally on a daily basis. When I go into the mod store, I had to actually look at the top to see how many pieces of content there are because it changes every day. So inside of a week, there could be anywhere between 5 pieces of content and 5 dozen pieces of content that will change or get updated. So we do have a back catalog of some training where there are things that don't change frequently, but for the purposes of keeping it interesting and so you're not pushing people through the same training on an annual basis, we are updating the content literally every day.
Very nice, very nice. And another question here, I mean, what do companies typically see from the time they start this to the time, you know, they get through it, maybe 6-9 months kind of down the road? Does the phish prone statistic, is that what it is? Does it go down?
Oh, absolutely. So that's part of that benchmark at the beginning where you're going to go try to get yourself a baseline. And we find that to be somewhere between 20 and 30%. Don't feel bad if you're in the 40%. There's a fair amount of customers that start that. In the first 3 months, almost always we see a significant reduction. After 9 months, a year, most of our customers are actually down in that 3% range. That graph I showed in my slides earlier, that's not make-believe marketing information. That's taken from our 28,000 customers that are using the platform. So to go from 25% to 2.5% over a year and staying down at that level, obviously there's a change that's occurring and people are paying more attention to what's coming in. If you could if you could do a 90% reduction in attack surface for $15 a user per year, it's kind of a no-brainer. It adds up very quickly, the costs of a breach or some sort of an incident that can occur.
Very nice. A comment here from James. He said, as a KnowBe4 user and partner, I strongly recommend Platinum. Smart groups will save so much time, and it pays for itself. That's good feedback. Sean says, I can vouch for the drop in phish rates. We went from 25% to under 4% so far. My goal is under 2%. So people are obviously using the product and enjoying it. Let's see. Do we have time for a few more questions? Maybe just a few. Another question here. So when people get started with this, how do they surprise the end users with this, or do you first kind of have a training session and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it? What do people typically do?
Okay, so that's the point for the culture of the company. The recommended mechanism is that you do your first phishing test, your baseline phishing test, and you do it blind because you're looking to actually get something to measure off of. And then from that point on, we recommend absolute transparency of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Like I said, it's not just training the users like that bad things exist. You're also getting users to care about the impact and why is it that they care about. It's not just the company that they're protecting, but they're also protecting themselves. So that first test is the only time that we recommend not saying anything because you're really looking to get an accurate measurement. And after that, tell them what you're doing. Tell them that you're going to phish them. We recommend not taking it as a punitive. Take it as this is a game. This is, try to be the person that doesn't fall for a phishing test. So a lot of our customers like to do that. They share the results with the people internally. There's gamification features in the platform. I didn't get a chance to show that, but there's actually when an end user logs in to take their training, they can see leaderboards in there and they can see badges that they can earn. There's lots of things to do to make it where it's a game. If you have a person that fails a lot, the first thing we recommend doing, phish them more frequently. Give them the opportunity to get some easy simulations. And if they do good with those, then ramp up the difficulty. And as that one caller mentioned, smart groups hugely makes that so much easier to do. You don't actually have to look for those users. The platform identifies those users that are at highest risk, and you can automate that process of phishing them more frequently or phishing them with easier templates to get them up to snuff, and then give them the more difficult ones.
Awesome. Well, Greg, it's been great having you on. Again, love the live demo. That's all the time we have for our live questions. There's a few more questions for you there in the queue if you don't mind checking those out. Thanks so much for being on the event today.
All right. Thank you very much.
For more information on KnowBe4, check out the handout that's available for download there in the audience console. Actually, in this case, it's a URL that will take you to the KnowBe4 phishing security test offer, and you can just sign up for that and test your employees and see how phish prone you are. It's a free test, so make sure you check that out. You don't want to get caught with phishing and malware and ransomware at your company. So make sure you check that out. And with that, it's time to move on to the next presentation on today's Security EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Kathleen Walker, Director of Product Marketing, and Jamie Hines, Product Manager at SolarWinds. Kathleen and Jamie, are you there?
Yes,
We
Davis.
are.
How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being on the Security EcoCast. Take it away.
All right. Thanks very much. We'll go ahead and thanks for the introduction. My name is Kathleen Walker. I'm a director on the product marketing side for our security portfolio, and Jamie is our product manager. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about the SolarWinds security team and our approach to helping our customers protect themselves from the threats that are out there today. So one place we like to start is just to level set and remind everybody that security is not just a concern for large organizations anymore. There's a lot of market data out there that's just calling into attention that there's no longer an opportunity for security through obscurity, even if you're not a high-name brand enterprise Last year, almost 70% of small or medium business sizes had experienced some sort of cyber attack in the last 12 months, and 58% of small and medium-sized businesses had actually had a data breach, meaning those attacks were successful. But not only more types of organizations are being targeted, the average cost of those breaches also continue to rise year over year. I know a lot of us look at the cost of a data breach report that happens annually, and they really show how that monetary impact really comes from the loss of business and the customer trust that comes with being identified as somebody who's had a specific breach. So from that same report, and I'm sure it's a surprise to no one, is that one of the main causes of security issues is just well-meaning employees that make mistakes. So either technical glitches or human error are still counting for about 50% of those data breaches. And that's just something that, obviously we can't get away from supporting that. So companies are also, they're looking for answers. They're looking for tools that can help them detect those threats and to reduce the time it takes to do the forensic analysis. And so we know at SolarWinds there's a need in the market for software that can help organizations stay secure and recover from those incidents faster. So our approach to addressing this need is to make security tools that are simple, powerful, and affordable. And our portfolio of products is really routed in the NIST framework, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but they're providing tools that will help users identify when there's a security issue, help with protecting your existing assets, so understanding who has access to what, having a robust training program, protecting the security of your infrastructure, et cetera. Also detecting, these events are kind of ongoing situations. There's never really a break then when it comes to folks looking for vulnerabilities across the web. So it's really important to have solutions in place that detect those security incidents. And then, of course, responding and recovering. So respond really focuses more on what's happening immediately within the incident. And then, of course, recovery ongoing, making sure that you get back up to your day zero state, and then also protect yourself from future attacks going forward. So our products really try to fit into these blocks and help those IT professionals who are doing more than just supporting infrastructure these days, but also have a set of responsibilities around keeping both that infrastructure and your company secure. So this lays out a little bit more of our portfolio and how they fit into the different categories. Today we're going to touch on two of these solutions, our patch management solution. Patch is obviously a foundational set of functionality that everybody needs to have the ability to do easily and safely. A lot of access, unauthorized access, can come through vulnerabilities that the malicious user would detect before somebody that's actually managed the system knows about. So it's really important to stay on top of what vulnerabilities have been detected across various parts of your infrastructure, and have a way to quickly test the patches and roll them out to your systems, and then track whether or not those systems are up to date. And then Security Event Manager, that's our SIEM solution. And that's obviously a solution that goes and helps understand what's going on in your environment right now, when and how to respond to specific security situations, et cetera. We have a variety of other solutions as well that cover other parts of the framework, but today we're really going to focus in on more of that patching and Security Event Manager functionality. So on the Security Event Manager side, again, this is our flagship SIEM solution. And at SolarWinds, we really think it's important for companies to have this kind of technology in place, even though a lot of people, when they hear about SIEM, they may think that it's more than we need, or we don't have the time or resources needed for that, or to support something like that. But we feel it's really a fundamental piece of any environment to help protect your organization. So SIEMs can help improve your, operational continuity and minimize downtime and exposure. So these are solutions that are continuously watching over time and across your environment that collect the data from all the different pieces within your infrastructure, normalize it, and bring it into one place so that they can see if something's happening and touching a variety of different parts. You don't have to understand yourself specifically what's going on with each piece and then correlate it within your mind. This will take that heavy lifting off your plate. So it's really important in terms of ensuring that continuity. And it can really help free up your team as well in terms of, you have team members. Obviously, if you're in IT, you probably have more to do than the resources or time that you have available. So a tool like this that can take some of that functionality and automate it and then also make it easier to spot serious issues can be a dramatic help in terms of keeping your environment secure. But, of course, there's also barriers in terms of being able to implement a SIEM solution as well. And oftentimes it's the fact that if you think about logs in general, the first thing that comes to mind is just the quantity of information that's going to be coming across your screen. And also, the ability to link and collect from the variety of sources across your environment. The number of technology pieces within your infrastructure is never going to decrease. There's always going to be more touch points. And the ability to see across that whole situation is really important to understanding what's going on right now. So the ability to consolidate that, look at it in one normalized view is really important. Of course, there's also a lot of manual efforts when it comes to understanding what threats are happening right now and how you should respond. It can be very time-consuming and also, completely impact the productivity of your team on any given day. And then again, as your environment grows, is your tool going to grow with you? That's always a concern. And of course, we're all experiencing the fact that there's never enough security expertise to go around. We have a lot of high-quality, people with a lot of knowledge out there, but more companies have openings than I think can be filled right now. And of course, most companies also have some sort of compliance angle that they need to be addressing, and understanding that changing landscape and whether or not you can demonstrate compliance is just an ongoing concern, and also a newly focused concern for the mid-market. So what to do? Traditional SIEM solutions out there have been really resource intensive, requiring professional services to get them up and running and maintain them. Maybe you don't feel like you have the folks in your facility or in your team that can really maximize the usage of that data. Do I need to be an expert in order to actually use this tool, or is this tool something that can help me kind of get there as I evolve my own knowledge base? So, and oftentimes these are associated with just high expense, not just for the tool, but also the ongoing maintenance and just getting up and running to begin with. So that can cause a lot of mid-sized companies to think maybe this isn't a solution that I'm able to afford right now. And what we're here to do is talk to you more about how, with our solutions that are really focused on being affordable and solving specific technology problems for the IT administrator, this may not be as out of reach as you think. So between the functionality that our security event manager can bring to the table, where we're really focusing in on the needs of that mid-market, and the functionality that our patch management solution that can really help you take that critical process and make it easier and less time-consuming on your team, we feel like you have the ability now to kind of level the playing field and get that higher level security functionality that you may have thought was out of reach. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about the products and their functionality, and then run you through a demo to show you how they work.
Thanks, Kathleen. So in terms of some of the challenges that IT pros face when it comes to both security and log management, I kind of want to spend some time going through our security event manager and how we can address some of those issues our customers typically face. So first of all, when it comes to, let's say, detecting threats and having a pair of eyes constantly monitoring, what's happening on your network via log data, that's something that's, a great feature of this product in that it does real-time event correlation. So you can be collecting log data from things like firewalls, workstations, domain controllers, etc., and then easily correlate all those events to look for suspicious sequences of activity to help to detect malicious activity. So that's one aspect of it. So it's one thing to detect, but also to respond. So our security event manager can also perform active response actions. So let's say, for example, you see, let's say, an admin user plugging in a USB stick to a file server at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night. We can correlate all the logs that will give us that picture and then actually detach that USB device from here. So not just actually correlating the information, but responding to it can be a real time saver and can really stop some potential attacks in their tracks by doing things like logging off users, killing malicious processes, disabling user rights from certain groups, etc. So very powerful active response actions also, which I can walk through on a demo in a minute. In terms of, I think Kathy mentioned kind of consolidation and normalization of log data. Even without any form of event correlation, having a single place to store all your logs can make it much quicker during incident response or trying to detect activity, and also from a compliance perspective. So having all your logs in one single location, which allows you to get instant visibility of all your logs from all your various different sources, as well as applying searching to that or even live filtering to look for events right as they happen. Even if it is like an operational issue, as Kathleen mentioned, if there is an outage and you want quick visibility into what happened, what's currently happening, you can come into our security event manager and get a live log stream with very easy to use fast search and filtering as well. So when it comes to compliance, especially around the time of compliance audits, be it internal audits or even by an external company, it can be a real challenge for people to prove that compliance. So for example, if you see an auditor looking for, show me a list of people that left the company on this particular week, now show me the log data to show that you disabled each of those accounts in Active Directory, in a timely manner. If you don't have a tool like Security Event Manager, trying to pull that log data, historically, it could even be purged at this point. Having compliance reports directly to hand to show, okay, week 42, here's who left, here's the corresponding log data for account disablement, and that's your checkbox done from the compliance standpoint. So it's a very powerful tool, not just for security use cases, but also compliance is certainly a key driver for many of our customers as well. When it comes to threat intelligence, obviously the correlation rules do a great job of looking for unusual activity, but we also provide threat intelligence integration as well, so we integrate threat feeds online. So, as more and more IP addresses are added, probably on a per minute basis, we're pulling down that threat feed, and we're looking for any IP addresses within your log data that corresponds to one of those blacklisted IPs online. That could be an IP address associated with phishing, malware, ransomware, spam, you name it. So if we see, for example, outgoing traffic from a workstation on our network to maybe a command and control server, you can then be easily notified to say we're seeing traffic to an IP address or even from an IP address that matches a threat, where you can then go and investigate from there. Finally, when it comes to file integrity monitoring, and again, this is from both a security and compliance angle, when you think of the amount of potentially sensitive information stored on your network, be it in Word documents, in PDF files, on PowerPoint decks, etc., having a clear picture on who's accessing those files, maybe who's trying to access them, who's deleting files, who's changing permissions to those files, again, can be a real indicator of someone, either an insider threat or equally an outsider, trying to perform some form of malicious activity, or even trying to siphon off data if we see a lot of, let's say, file copies to USB stick or something along those lines. So without the need for any Windows file auditing, we actually provide native file integrity monitoring for files directories and also registry keys. So obviously there can be a lot of damage done to registry key changes. especially from like a malware point of view. So if we see any suspicious registry key changes, we can also monitor that. So it's not just files. So before we dive into a demo of SEM, I'd also like to touch on another tool we have called Patch Manager. So, as Kathleen, I think, alluded to, that patch management is kind of just a basic cyber hygiene everyone should be doing. The amount of ransomware attacks that we see that are successful purely down to people having unpatched machines on their network, it's a real driver for successful ransomware attacks. So having a tool like Patch Manager allows you to keep a close eye on any unpatched machines or what's the patching status of your network, so we can detect, let's say, unpatched machines or machines that are out of date, as well as responding to that by actually applying those patches to those machines. Not only do we do the Windows packages, so we integrate with both WSUS and SCCM for Windows packaging, but we also do third-party updates. So it's one thing to have all your Microsoft updates up to date, but what about things like Google Chrome, Firefox, let's say Java, OpenJDK, iTunes, all those usual suspects you're going to see on your users' workstations. So you don't want to rely on those auto updaters. Chances are people aren't going to keep tabs on Chrome updates, etc. themselves. So having the power to publish those third-party updates into your WSUS and manage that from our patch manager, so you can manage approvals, you can manage the schedule, so what patches are going to be applied to which group of machines and when that's going to happen are typically the big challenges people have with patch management. So that's something our patch manager aims to do. And talk about compliance again in terms of patch compliance. Again, if an auditor needs to see that you are regularly patching your machines and running reports to see any unpatched machines and taking action from there, Patch Manager also has some very powerful reports as well, which help you to demonstrate patch compliance. And even not from a compliance point of view, but even for your own peace of mind to know that your machines are up to date. So certainly, two very powerful tools in the SolarWinds security portfolio. So I'm just going to share my screen. It might just take a second to load, if that's okay. So when it comes to Security Event Manager, this is the screen I spoke about a minute ago about the live log stream. So on my screen at the moment, you can see each and every log coming in from every source across your network in nearly real time. So within a second or two, it's going to display here in this console. The all events filter, is literally going to do all events. So it can be difficult to spot any unusual events or interesting events here, given the volume of log data that's going to be coming into the system. So for that reason, we have lots of out-of-the-box filters, along with the ability to create your own filters from scratch. So for example, if I want to look at, let's say, Active Directory user account changes, I can see here there was an account lockout. So immediately I can come in here and see more information on that event. And previously when we spoke about the challenges associated with logs, one of those was the format of those logs. So having all different formats can be a real headache to try and make sense of those logs. So when it comes to normalization, we normalize each and every log as it's received from literally hundreds of different sources. And from there, it makes it very easy to spot or to kind of comprehend each log. So for example, I can clearly see an account lockout here. I can see someone actually changed the password, and I can see the user account, the machine name it happened from, the event ID, and the date and time it happened. So very easy to actually comprehend that log data thanks to that normalization. As you can see, there's filters for like authentication events, like remote user logons, Active Directory changes, the file auditing I spoke about, so looking at file read events, file deletions, etc., as well as things like virus attacks. So if you're monitoring, let's say, or if you're collecting antivirus logs, you can easily see here any virus attacks or malware or ransomware discovered on machines. So I find the virus attack is often a great starting point where you can see, for example, if there is a virus attack on a machine, you can then do a search up here for that same machine name and see, oh, I'm now seeing, let's say, unusual traffic from that machine. Or I'm now seeing, let's say, lots of logon attempts to that machine. So, you can really start here and you can try and, put the piece of the puzzle together on what impact that virus is having on my network, or that, let's say, that endpoint the virus was detected on. So when it comes to a real live log stream, a live filter, we can easily do filtering in here as well. as well as historical search. It's a very intuitive, easy to use, yet powerful log stream and log search capabilities. Finally, on this page, you can also export those logs to CSV. So once you find the logs you need, you can easily export them, let's attach to a help desk ticket, or even share that with auditors during a compliance audit. So lots of use cases there for actually exporting the log data from the application easily to a CSV where you can share from there. So we also spoke about the correlation rules. And much like the filters, we provide lots of content out of the box. So I think, again, as Kathleen mentioned, many of our SEND customers aren't necessarily security experts. They need a tool they can get really quick time to value from, and don't need to start with a blank canvas in terms of what should I be monitoring, what rules should I be creating, how do I create a rule. So for that reason, we have tons of rules out of the box to help with the most common use cases for a SIEM. So I think I mentioned an example earlier of, let's say, a USB device. So if I do a search for USB, I can now see detached unauthorized USB device. So we've already built the rule condition for you. So we're looking for an attached device, if it's a USB device. And finally, we have a group here for authorized USB devices. So we can maintain a whitelist of devices, and anything not in that whitelist, based on the, let's say, unique ID, device ID of that USB, you can then block that from there. So if I edit this rule, I can also adjust the thresholds there. So I could say it's okay if I see 1 in 30 seconds, but if I see, let's say, 3 of those in 30 seconds from different machines, I want to be alerted based on that. So when it comes to active response, of course, you can send things like an email alert, which could be easily missed if it's in the middle of the night. So we have our email templates. You can easily, customize what content in the email. You can do, free text, and you can add actually log data in here as well. But what's, slightly more powerful is the ability to perform actions. So for example, if we want to detach a USB device, so we see someone attached to the device, we now want to detach it. I can add that action from there, and it'll perform that action on that endpoint. So in terms of the other actions, things like blocking IP addresses on firewalls, disabling user accounts, even going as far as disabling the networking on a machine. So if we saw a virus on a machine, you want to disable the NIC on that Windows machine to actually stop the spread of that virus. That's also possible. If we see any unusual processes starting or unwanted processes, we can kill those, log off users, shut down machines, stop services, and many more. And that's without the need for any scripting language. So that's all predefined actions you can easily set up as part of any correlation rule. So as I mentioned, lots of out-of-the-box content, as well as the ability to create your own rules from scratch as well. Next, I also just mentioned Patch Manager. So Patch Manager supports a wide range of third-party patches. So we maintain all these packages ourselves. We have a team here in SolarWinds who keep a very close eye on what packages are released by vendors. We then package them ourselves, add some logic to it. For example, we'll check if, say for example, Google Chrome. We'll check to make sure, is Chrome installed on machine? If it is, what version is installed? Only if it's an older version, apply the update. Is it a 64-bit machine? Are we applying the right package? So lots of logic is added to these packages, all by our team in SolarWinds. As you can see, we have a wide range of packages that we support. And one of the common questions we typically get is how long does it take for packages to be added? As you can see in this change history, it's typically within a day or two. So for example, Opera 63 was released on the 18th. In that case, we released it on the same day. iTunes version 12.10 was introduced on 09/11. 09/12 it was added to the catalog. So we keep very close eye on what vendors are releasing, and within a day or two they're applied to our catalog. So you're not waiting a long time for them to be published to our catalog. So in terms of, let's say, identifying missing patches, we have a nice dashboard here where you can see missing patches. So for example, I see this Windows update is missing on this particular node. I can then drill into this node, and I can see there is a number of installed packages, a number of needed packages. I can also see packages that have failed, maybe downloaded but not installed yet. And I can also see other missing updates on that particular node. So some of those could be high risk. They could be critical updates from Microsoft that need to be patched straight away on those machines. And you can schedule that or do on-demand patching from Patch Manager. In terms of the most vulnerable machines, we can also see things here like machines that are missing a high number of updates, which could be a real cause of concern. And I can then come in here and see, for example, here's all the missing updates on that machine, and then schedule your patching task from there. So certainly, a very powerful tool when it comes to keeping a close eye on your patches, and also keeping your machines up to date via Patch Manager with the WSUF or SCCM integration also. So if it's okay with you, Kathleen, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can go back to the slide if that's okay.
Yep, that sounds good. All right.
All right.
So we have, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Great demo, Jamie. Great presentation, Kathleen. We do have a couple quick questions here for the audience. The first one is on the screen now, and it just says, would you be interested in a full demo of our products with an engineer? Select all that apply. Jamie talked about Security Event Manager and Patch Manager as well, or you can select all of the above. So we'll just leave that on the screen for a minute, and we've got a second poll to do as well. But why don't we do a little bit of Q&A while we keep these polls up for just a few minutes to allow people to respond to those. Let's see, first question that came in, and I'm not sure if this is for Jamie or Kathleen. I'll just let you all figure that out and respond accordingly. First question is, what log sources are supported?
Yep, great question. So we support literally hundreds of different log sources. We build the parsers ourselves. So there's actually a link which I can share with you, David, for a list of parsers that we support, ranging from antivirus tools, databases, all the various different operating systems, firewalls, etc. So there's hundreds of sources that we support, and they're available to view on our TWAC online community.
Okay, nice. So tons of log sources, just about anything I have I probably can bring in. Second question, they're asking, is it possible to deploy this into the cloud?
Absolutely, yeah. So you have a number of different deployment options, so great flexibility there. You can deploy in both AWS and Azure. So for AWS, it's done via a private AMI. So if you contact SolarWinds, you'll be put through to the sales department. They can then make that private AMI available to you, which will appear in your AWS console, and you can then launch from there. For Azure, we provide a virtual hard drive image, which is very easy to deploy on Azure. Of course, you can also install on-premises via a virtual appliance that supports both Hyper-V and VMware.
And then you have like unlimited scalability for all that logging data. So I can see that being nice. Of course, there's a pay-per-use charge associated with it, but it's a great option, I'm sure, for people who need that. Another question here, and before I read that, I want to point out I just popped up a second poll question on the screen, and that says, would you be interested in receiving information on pricing for new or additional licenses for SolarWinds products? Just check all that apply. We'll leave that up while we finish up our Q&A. What's the licensing model for the log management tool that you demonstrated, Jamie?
Yeah, great question, David. So we're actually kind of unique when it comes to our licensing in that we license on the number of sources that you're collecting logs from. So we don't license based on the log volume, which many vendors do. We do it based on the node count. So for example, if you have, let's say, 50 Windows servers you want to collect logs from, that equates to 50 nodes using our tool. So regardless if you're sending 10 gigs of logs per day or 100 gigs of logs per day, it's based on the number of nodes you're collecting logs from, which is pretty unique in terms of the licensing model.
Yeah, I like that because, I mean, with the consumption-based or the size of the storage of log data model, I mean, over time, I would think your bill is just going to go higher and higher and higher because you're going to keep more and more log data. So I like your model better because you have a set number of log sources and your pricing is based on that. So that's cool. Let's see, last question here. We probably have time for that is, can you explain how the active response actions work?
Yeah, of course. So kind of two parts of that question. The first one is like, in terms of how we get log data into the system, it's done by an agent. So you install the agent, let's say on your workstations, your servers, etc. We support all the big operating systems. And that then allows us to collect that log data. It's compressed and encrypted. And then as part of that, that same agent uses the active response as well. So when we say, let's say, detach USB device, we're sending a command to the agent on your endpoint, and that then performs the detach USB device on that particular endpoint. So it's all done via our SEM agent.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for our live Q&A, but a really great presentation, Kathleen. Great demo, Jamie. Thank you both for being on the event today.
Pleasure's always, David.
We appreciate
Thank you.
And for more information on SolarWinds, of course, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. There's also a lot of additional resources over at solarwinds.com and the Thwack community as well. So feel free to check those out. And with that, it's time for our first $500 Amazon gift card giveaway. And let me bring up the prize winner here, just selected. We're rolling the dice. We are doing the little balls and the thing that turns around. Okay, there we go. From random.org, the prize winner is Jason Bowman from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Jason Bowman of Massachusetts. They've got 2 more gift cards to give out on the event today, so make sure you stay tuned. And, of course, make sure you stay tuned for 2 more excellent presentations. And speaking of excellent presentations, I'm excited to introduce Zoe Lindsay, Security Strategist at Duo. Zoe, are you there?
I am. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Afternoon.
Good morning. Afternoon. Thanks for being on the event today, Zoe. Take it away.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. So today we are going to be talking about maturing a zero trust strategy for the extended enterprise. Knowing that we have a limited amount of time today, I'm really going to try and focus on concepts here and not so much specifically how Duo goes about trying to implement these things. Definitely we have some more information on that, so I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards if you had questions there. But really what we're talking about when we talk about the zero trust methodology is trying to address a sort of fundamental challenge that we've seen growing over the last 15 years or so, that our networks have changed. For a long time, we dealt with a evolution of essentially the same sort of network setup, where we had a number of workstations, mainframes, or standalone servers, all connected to a local area network, all resources being stored on that network, and then connecting out to a wider area network of the internet at large. In this model, the target for attackers really started with targeting systems and networks with the end goal of pursuing or capturing confidential or desirable data. So we built a pretty robust security model to start to address these kinds of challenges. We started with having some perimeter-focused tools, firewalls and NAC tools that help protect the edges of our local area network and apply some policy to any connection trying to come in, or in some cases that is trying to connect out for transferring data. And everything was contained within there, your identity services, your administrative services, productivity tools like email or Office suites. All of that was operating within the local perimeter. Then as we had more and more users that were going to be working outside of that local environment, pardon me, we evolved to add on some VPN infrastructure. So we're still applying policy and handling that security, access, and visibility at the local area level, but what we're doing is we're adding on an element that allows external machines that have been properly provisioned and prepared to connect back to that local area network so that we're able to apply that security policy even if they're outside. And there are some challenges here, one being the requirement to make sure that those systems are set up, and potentially there can be an issue with latency as well. So what we saw starting 15 years or so ago was users start to take advantage of these consumer-facing services that were cloud-hosted. And they saw a lot of what they traditionally had operated on their local desktop move to cloud-based or hosted services where they could work from any device, their smartphone, their laptop, desktop, wherever they were. If they could get online, they were able to get that work done. And they wanted that same sort of flexibility at work. As time moves forward, I think the first of these services that we start to move into the business ready or especially enterprise ready stage were productivity tools like email, and we start to see those move outside of the perimeter. Oh, one too many. Then as those tools became more robust, we started to see some of the back-end services that we relied on start to move outside. Those administrative tools, even hosted identity providers, start to come into play here. And so now, in many cases, we have an equal distribution of priority systems and data inside and outside our network. And in many cases, even more of that data and those systems or services that we rely on lying outside of that network than inside of it. So the challenge that we're facing is that we've got mature strategies to handle this sort of environment, but it's been an evolving conversation how we address this new expanded enterprise that includes both local, hybrid, and fully hosted elements. Along with this, we've seen the attack strategy and priority of those attacks start to change as well. We've seen them move to directly targeting data. Systems are less relevant, networks are less relevant as we often don't control those systems, and we often don't control those networks when we're dealing with hosted solutions. So when we start to talk about or think about the perimeter, really what we need to consider is all of these elements, both everything that would fall within our old perimeter, as well as these remote employees who may or may not have corporate provision devices, cloud-based applications, hybrid cloud services that have both an on-site and a hosted element, users' personal devices, which they are looking for the flexibility to get their work done from wherever possible, mobile devices, as well as those vendors and contractors. We've seen some painful news stories over the last several years that remind us that we need to have a strong consideration and security strategy around how we're going to control access from third-party vendors to make sure that they are not exposing us to unnecessary risk. And the challenge hasn't really been that there's a lack of solutions to try and address these problems. Really, the challenge has been more along the lines that there's a plethora, right? There's a overwhelming abundance of approaches or philosophies to address different parts of this problem. The problem there is that complexity is hard to secure. The more elements you add to your strategy, the more dashboards you're trying to keep an eye on, the more likely it is that something is going to go between the. But if we take a step back and looking at the trees and really look at the forest, security is going to pretty much always boil down to the meeting point between technology and people, right? If we have technology without human interaction, just sitting there on its own, spun up, but no one accessing it, there's not a lot of risk in terms of the security of that information at that time. People without access to systems can potentially exploit one another, but at some level, if you're looking to exfiltrate data, that's going to involve interacting with some technology or systems. So if we're looking for where we want to focus our attention, we can start with where the common elements in successful attacks lie. 81% of breaches involve weak or stolen user credentials. 70% of breaches involve compromised devices, which means that if we're looking at those sort of big bite challenges that we're trying to address, we want to start by asking or answering these questions. How are you going to stop attacks that use stolen but legitimate credentials? And how do you prevent devices with poor security hygiene from accessing critical applications? Zero trust has been a philosophy that's been applied to try and answer this question. And one of the best ways that I can quickly sum up the concept of zero trust is to treat every access attempt as though it is originating from an untrusted network or an untrusted source. Another way of thinking about this as you apply the same level of security to protecting resources inside your perimeter as you would to an untrusted external connection. However, this does not mean a lack of trust in your users. This is saying that the network on its own no longer infers trust. It means that we need to establish that trust upon each connection when a user is going to enter when a system connection is initiated. And so this idea came out of the Jericho Forum in the early 2000s, and that conversation really started to elevate with Google's Beyond Corp initiative kicking off in 2014 that they provided updates on in 2016 and 2017. But there's some key elements here in terms of building a zero trust strategy. And rather than tell you what the perfect zero trust network is going to look like, I'm going to try and frame this in terms of if we have this traditional network, what does maturing a zero trust model look like? How do we get from here to there? So the first step is going to be validating that user identity, right? So we want to start by doing strong authentication to identify that user. Then we need to start building an inventory of devices. There's more elements than just that user authentication when a user is getting connected, right? You've got the user, but also the device that they're connecting with. If they're doing an out-of-band authentication, the device that they're authenticating with, and the network that they're connecting through. Before we are able to start to apply controls and assess risk, we need to have visibility. And that starts with getting visibility into the health of devices that are connecting to your resources. After that, we want to start to build policies, right? After we have visibility and we can assess what is a more or less risky connection, then we need to exert some level of control through policies to make sure that those riskier connections are not being allowed access to our data. That would be step 3. Step 4 is to make those policies more granular, or you could say nuanced or contextual, because not every tool is the same, not every system is the same, not every user is going to interact with a tool in the same way. And one of the biggest takeaways that Google found was that it was necessary to have some level of consistency. So the better you're able to tailor that security to provide the right balance of security and convenience to your user, the less pushback you're going to get from your users, the more compliance you're going to get from your users, and the more appropriate granular control you're able to exert. You're able to, say, step up authentication to only allow specific devices for your highly privileged resources, whereas for less privileged resources, maybe the announcement of I always go to what's going to be on the cafe menu next week, but maybe the announcement about the company picnic, public company newsletter that isn't going to include any confidential information, that doesn't need to stand up to the same level of security requirements. So, what does a zero trust connection look like? The user is going to request access to an application. We're going to establish that user's identity not only with a username and password, but also via strong authentication, which is also known as multi-factor authentication, two-step authentication, step-up authentication. Any of these is essentially saying we are moving beyond relying on a password alone to validate that user. Once we've gotten that user themselves validated, we need to evaluate the trustworthiness of the user device and the security posture of that device. Then enforce those policies for the user and device combination. And if these checks are passed, then allow secure connection to the application. Once connected, you then want to make sure to continue monitoring for anomalies after that connection has occurred. And I want to mention here, as I said, I'm not going to dive too far into Duo's specific offering, but I want to mention that not all MFA is created equal. I would really encourage you to take a look at some recent research that Google conducted in conjunction with Berkeley on how effective account hygiene is at preventing hijacking from automated and from targeted attacks. It's a great read throughout. But one important takeaway that I'd like to make sure that you know is that 10% of phishing attacks were blocked by knowledge-based challenges, and 94% of phishing attacks were blocked by device-based challenges. When I say device-based challenges, I mean a challenge, a authentication challenge that is going specifically to a user device. And I mean that separately from telephony-based authentication, like an SMS text message or a phone callback. There is a further breakdown of the categories of authentication that Google was studying here, but I mention this only to say when you're considering strong authentication, you do want to make sure that you're doing something that is truly a separate factor. So if a password being something that you know, we don't want to have knowledge questions because now we're duplicating that factor. The same attacks that can compromise or capture that knowledge-based factor or primary credential could also be used to capture the answer to that knowledge from action. We'll talk about something you know, something you have, or something you are. A device-based challenge, something that, for example, is rather than going through a shared secret, is going through something like a public and private encrypted communication that can only be responded to by a specific device. That is now something that you have and not relying solely on information. So when we then move past validating that user and we're talking about the hygiene of a user device, here are some of those elements or telemetry that we're looking to gather. We want to know, is that a user-owned or corporate-managed device? If it's a mobile device, do they have a screen lock, and is that screen lock protected by a biometric factor? What's the condition of the operating system? Has it been rooted, jailbroken, or otherwise tampered with? What's the encryption status? Does it have full disk encryption, or is it encrypted at rest or no? The platform, OS, and version, who owns that device? And then for a Duo health check, we would also check what the version of Duo Mobile installed on that device is. On a laptop or desktop, again, we want to know the corporate managed status, who owns that device, the OS type and version, browser type and version, and whether Flash and Java plugins are installed, and if installed, whether those are up to date. So what's missing here? This is some of the telemetry that Duo is focused on gathering at the level of access. We are acting as sort of that last gateway that a user is going to walk through before they gain access to an application. And that's a good place to apply some zero trust-based checks, right? An interactive user login is going to precede most data being accessed by a user. And if we are able to make a universal last doorway that they have to walk through, that can work with a variety of primary authentication methods, now we are able to start applying a method that will work within and outside of our perimeter. But I don't want you walking away from today's conversation thinking that Duo or that access-based, zero trust-based access is going to be the end-all, be-all of securing your organization. There are additional elements to this. So when we're talking about what's missing in this piece of maturing that model, you do want to consider mobile device management. You can gather a lot of this telemetry without having to deploy any additional infrastructure or applications to users' devices. And where possible, I would encourage you across the board when considering your strategy, how can you best leverage the most information that is already available to you? So Duo's focus, the way that we go about this is we use information that's already there. The developer default permissions on a mobile application that's available to any app installed on your phone. In the laptop or desktop, we're using user agents in the browser. This means that you are able to capture every device and not only those that have a mobile device management agent installed on them. Now, that being said, without having an agent installed, there are things that you are not going to be able to do. If you don't have an agent installed, you're not going to be able to remotely wipe that device, to remotely to access or clear data from that device, etc. So you may still have a need for a mobile device management platform, but odds are that's going to apply to a subset of your users and not the total user base. So you can start by getting visibility across the board, and then as we talk about with those granular policies, you can establish where there's additional risk and you want to restrict access to managed devices and apply your mobile device management policies there instead. Now we're talking about virtual private networks. Again, there are trade-offs when you're using VPN access versus, something like a reverse proxy that can allow clientless access from anywhere to a resource. You could be looking at issues of latency, but also you are able to have better control over that continual traffic with a VPN than you are with enforcing only at the level of access. As I mentioned in that last slide, after we complete the initial connection, we want to continue to have some visibility and monitoring for anomalies, and VPN can still be a great tool to help you there. Similarly for NAC, when we're talking about your local network, when we're building a policy that is going to help cover the entire organization, that does not preclude taking additional measures in your network. So when you're deploying zero trust access, you want to consider how you're going to build the inventory of users and devices inside of your environment. You'll also need to take a full inventory of the applications and the sensitivity of data that is being accessed through them. If you have internal resources that you would like to have an external access to without the requirement for VPN, then you would want to look at something like an access proxy. A way to gauge trustworthiness. You want to be able to gather some basic telemetry and then based on what you are seeing, apply policy and controls based on the risk that you've assessed. Again, another one of the big takeaways from Google's Beyond Corp initiative, and I would encourage you, there's a couple of great white papers that Google wrote, the Google team wrote at the launch, midpoint, and the major conclusion of that deployment. And one of the biggest single takeaways that they marked and tracked as a metric that could determine the success of a stage of this deployment was consistency. If there was a consistent experience for users that were going to log in, even if there was an initial change, if that experience remained consistent, they had good uptake, a lower level of help desk tickets, and positive feedback from those users. When the access process changed significantly between different systems or that log and flow changed, they had more issues. So when you're talking about protecting your hosted assets, those resources that are operating in the cloud that your users are accessing, one of the big things that you can do to help streamline and add consistency to that access is leveraging a single sign-on workflow. And that robust policy engine that I mentioned. This is something that is going to continue to develop. And that's why we list this really as 2 steps out of those 5, right? You want to start by building a baseline. You're going to build a global policy that's going to represent the standard for any new application. This is the baseline that we want to establish in terms of security for access to this application. From there, you begin to that's a continuing process. You're going to have new tools that are going to come in, tools that are going to be end of life or depreciated within the organization. So this isn't a once and done step. It's a continuing step as you continue, as the model continues to mature. And just for a quick visual representation of what this looks like in terms of Duo's approach to access, we are acting as sort of the glue to help verify user trust, establish device trust in a basic device inventory, and provide single sign-on to services that are both local and remote. So we aren't getting involved in the primary stage of authentication, the identity validation that's typically happening with user credentials. After that is completed, that's where Duo comes in. There's a segmentation in that authentication process. And then once we are able to establish trust in that device through a health check or potentially checking if it's a corporate managed device, we're able to apply those role-based access policies. So I kind of sped through that to try and make sure that we're operating within time here. But I want to thank you. I hope that this was helpful for you. And I want to let you know, and our team will probably have some details for you. But if you're curious more specifically about how Duo goes about this, or how you could go about testing it in your organization. I believe that we're going to be working as well to go through how you would do this specifically with Duo, and I think they'll have some more info for you on that.
Yes, great presentation. So wow, I love the flow of that. You were like one awesome point after the other. I love the cool diagrams as well. I was tweeting about it while you were speaking. So cool stuff.
Cool.
Thank you so much. We do have a poll question here I'm going to pop up for the audience while we do some Q&A. So if you have a question about Zero Trust and multi-factor authentication, now is the time to ask. I'm going to start with some of the questions that already came in. So the first one, they're obviously concerned about, bring your own desktop and bring your own device, mobile device. I mean, everybody has their own personal device now. They want to access the corporate network. Can you talk for a minute about how is this possible if the company doesn't have, complete control over the end user's personal device that they're using to access the corporate network?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Because this is something that we're all hearing about, right? That users want to be able to respond to that urgent email, even if they're out of the office and they didn't take their laptop with them. And, there's a risk there that we don't have complete visibility and control over that device. But there is a risk in just saying no and completely blocking access from any user-owned device, which is, if the policy or process that we give to our users is too arduous, their motivation is going to be to try and find a way around it. And that's where we start to run into issues of shadow IT. So instead of framing ourselves as the Department of No, I like to think of this as sort of pull along instead of pushed out security, which says, hey, we want to give you the flexibility to get your work done from wherever you are, but before we can do that, we need to make sure that the machine that you're using is secure. So that's where tools like the instant health check that Duo does at the time that a user is going to get connected, along with some interactive feedback for that user. So we've got some neat self-remediation tools. So as an example, if I am going from my personal device and I'm going to connect to email, at the point that I'm doing that secondary authentication, it's doing a quick fingerprint of my device, both the laptop that I'm logging in from and the phone where I'm receiving my authentication request. And I can get feedback there that says, hey, looks like your browser is 30 days out of date, and the policy that's been set up for access to this service requires that you have the up-to-date version of your browser and an approved browser type. So before I can grant you access, you need to update your browser. And here's a link to the Chrome website so that you can see how to go about updating Chrome if you're unfamiliar. So rather than thinking of this device can or cannot be trusted, we're starting from the premise that on each connection attempt, the device cannot be trusted until we conduct what those tests are. And that would be where that telemetry that I was talking about for the mobile or endpoint device along the lines of OS and version, whether it's been tampered with, whether it has risky plugins installed, comes into play. If we're able to do a strong check and validate that there is a reasonable level of hygiene to that device, that it represents a lower risk, then we can choose whether or not we want to grant access.
Okay, very nice. And then another question here they're asking about endpoints and visibility. Does Duo have some tools available to help them with endpoint visibility?
So today, the answer to that is that we are able to help with endpoint visibility through any web-based authentication using the user agent in the browser. That's where we're gathering the OS and version, browser and version, whether Flash or Java are installed. As in terms of doing a deeper health check on that device, there's not something available for that today, but I can say we're very excited to be working with Cisco. You should expect to see some developments from us over the next year or so, so pay attention if that's something that you're interested in.
Very nice. Okay. And then I was actually looking on the website at the free Duo Security Beyond Duo 10-user trial. Can you tell us, if I were to download that, or one of the folks here on the event today, if they were to download that, kind of like what's the next step? What does that do for us? Where does it fit in?
Yeah. this is one of my favorite things. It's one of the things that I was nervous about whether we were going to be able to retain after our acquisition, and I'm really happy that we've been able to, because Duo's kind of foundational DNA, our founders, our CEO, our CTO, are really big into the open source movement. So wherever possible, we want to try and make sure that we're making tools available and accessible. Started advertising where smaller organizations couldn't afford the budget that was necessary to keep the value of their assets protected. So we have the Duo Personal Edition. It's something that, for myself, when I first joined the organization, I was trying to get a handle on what we did and how we did it. I deployed it in my home lab. I still use it for remote access to my home lab today. That 10-user free account, once you sign up for it, you will be walked through the first few steps to log into the administrative panel and set up your first integration, which can be anything from like running a quick installer for Windows authentication or just adding a plugin for like a WordPress blog. But that free account for up to 10 users for basic authentication access, you can continue to use. If you need more than 10 users, or if you want the more advanced policy tools, or the ability to have a separate corporate and user-owned device inventory, then you'd be looking at one of our paid plans. But if you want to just secure access to your own environment at home to just get familiar with what the service looks like, we think that you shouldn't have to wait until you pay for something to see how it works with the resources you're going to be relying on, so we make it available to you.
Awesome. I love that. That can help everyone to get started and learn more and kind of get their foot in the door with Zero Trust and multi-factor authentication. So really great presentation, Zoe. I think that's all the time we have for live Q&A, but it's been great having you on the event today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time.
And thank you to Duo Security for presenting on today's event. For more information, download the Moving Beyond the Perimeter paper that's available for download right there in the Handouts tab. That's got a ton of information on Zero Trust and Google's BeyondCorp security model. So make sure that you check that out. And, of course, also visit duo.com and learn about the free trial that Zoe just talked about as well. And now it's time to give out our next Amazon $500 gift card that is going out to Ian Mills of New Jersey. Congratulations, Ian Mills of New Jersey. We've got one more to give out still on today's event, so make sure you stay tuned. And now it is time to introduce our next presenter on the Security EcoCast. That is Mr. Justin Prince, Lead Insight Technical Specialist at Rapid7. Justin, are you there?
I am, and glad to be here.
Thanks for being on, Justin. Take it away.
Thanks so much. I've already gotten the introduction, but again, my name is Justin Prince, and I'm specifically a specialist in vulnerability management at Rapid7, and I've been with Rapid7 for the past 5 or so years, maybe slightly under that, and for 3 of those, 24/7, my life has been vulnerability management, and prior to that, a lot of IT all the way from help desk through sysadmin and security analyst jobs as well. So, when I talk about vulnerability management, whether it is an opportunity like this one, reaching a broader audience, or I'm sitting down with a very specific customer, and I apologize, you get a quick look at me there. I like to take a step back and really start from the beginning. And for a lot of folks, even those running very mature, call them hyper-mature programs, multiple solutions, processes, tech in place, it helps to take that step back and understand what we're doing. And when we're talking about vulnerability management, part of it is definitely finding these guys, finding those potential issues that can become realized issues, real-world problems for your organization. And specifically with vulnerability management, it's kind of in the title, but it's managing those vulnerabilities, eliminating where possible, patching, remediating, putting other controls in place, upstream mitigations, things like that. But we're talking about that full, ongoing, repeating process. And it's really one of my colleagues defined it in a way that I really love. It's risk management with a technical backbone. We all the way from discovery through treatment of these vulnerabilities. We want to look at all parts of that process. And this is a multi-team process, or at least it should be. And believe me, we talk to a lot of customers where you ask, hey, is the InfoSec team here, is the IT and operations team here, and then there's a single individual across the table from you. So we're very cognizant of that. We also talk to folks that have teams of hundreds that really still have the same problems, maybe just at a different scale when it comes to vulnerability management. And though we're going to focus on vulnerability management in the brief time that we have here today, this is really, a look at our overall vision, the Rapid7 cloud, where we've got multiple products at the core, and services as well, sharing information. And if nothing else, we're going to talk about vulnerability management here, but if nothing else, if you focus on that central piece, which is unified data collection, we're very fanatical about reducing our footprint as much as possible in our customer environments, less resources, less invasive collection, if you will, doing it once and squeezing as much value out of the information that we gather. We understand you're giving us some level of access. There's mutual benefit, of course, to that. But we want to push that data as far as we possibly can. And that goes across our whole portfolio, but especially when we talk about InsightVM, it's a core feature. We like to keep it simple. And this is not necessarily, these are tenets that we apply to InsightVM, but these are ideas that you should use regardless of what you're using for vulnerability management. The keep it simple rule applies just as well here as to anything else. And a lot of times we see programs that have saddled themselves with technical burden that they just don't need, or they've over-engineered a process that we can simplify. So, these three themes, we used to call them phases, but that's not really the correct approach, because we start to think of them as an asynchronous set of processes. Scan, rinse, repeat. That's the old school version of vulnerability management. Where we're at now is these things should always be happening simultaneously at all times. And that sounds overwhelming, and in a lot of ways it is. But that's where Rapid7 comes in. We want to simplify, the technical pieces wherever possible and build a process that is sustainable. Anyone who's ever used a vulnerability management solution or a scanner of any kind knows it's pretty easy these days to get something up and running. And it's kind of exciting the first time you hit that button. But once you start to get results that you weren't necessarily prepared for, and your 1,000 assets becomes 2,000, and your couple hundred vulnerabilities becomes a couple 100,000, it really starts to get hectic. So we want to think of these things at the outset. We want to talk about collection of data, collecting as much as possible on an ongoing basis. Ideally, set it and forget it wherever possible, but just something that is going to be telling you about what your attack surface looks like and how it changes over time, given that most modern environments have some level of dynamic features. We want to make sure we stay on top of that. And when we talk about prioritization, historically, this is where the folks in InfoSec got really good at Excel and spreadsheets, and we a lot of times became glorified accountants because we were really good at working with the numbers, but that's where we were spending all of our time, and it was taking our attention, our expertise away from other areas where we could help. So we want to add context to the information that we find, both in terms of the vulnerabilities, in terms of the assets or endpoints that we're finding these vulnerabilities on, and we want that triage to happen automatically. Tell us what's important with some context that we've added along the way. And then the last piece is remediate, which is really a catch-all for the things I mentioned earlier, true remediation, push button, receive patch, or compensating controls, mitigations. One of my favorites is a good old-fashioned decommission. But there are a lot of budgetary and time and team constraints kind of tied up with remediation. So when you see us mention SecOps or security operations agility, we're really talking about building something that allows the different teams to work a little better together. If you look at this particular slide, this is the last one before we jump into the demo, on the left-hand side with collection, we're typically talking about the InfoSec team, whose job it is to find and understand the risk associated with the environment. And on the other side with remediation, we tend to talk about info technology, we're talking about operations, DevOps teams, whose job is to actually reduce that risk, to take that information and do something actionable with it. And there's a rift between those because we really need to work together on common goals. We need to make sure we're all communicating in the same language and actually reducing risk, and not just in a scan, rinse, repeat, never really make any changes kind of model. So let's talk about how we can help. And I will bounce over to my screen here. Just making sure that's coming up.
Yeah, it looks good to me, Justin. I love the demo.
Is it? Okay.
The UI, by the way.
No, I appreciate that. So I'm going to go in. I like to cheat and have the attendee view up, and it's not working for me, but I'm just going to roll in good faith. We're looking at my dashboard here in InsightDM, and the dashboards I like to start with, not just because it's pretty visually pleasing, although I'll definitely agree with that, but it's a really good place to jump into multiple different areas of the solution, especially if you're using it on a day-to-day basis. And when I start with the dashboards, it's really all about creating different views or different slices of your environment, making sure that folks are seeing exactly what they need, whether it's adding different cards and you can see the various categories that we have there, or creating new custom dashboards from scratch, or pulling in pre-built dashboards from the Rapid7 library. And we'll flip back to a couple different versions of those in just a moment. But it's all about getting that view of your environment, whether it is someone who's responsible for, we'll say, boots on the ground remediation, or someone whose job it is to look at that 30,000-foot view and try to triangulate, hey, here are areas where we really need to focus. Well, let's talk about how that information gets in there. We've got a few different ways to collect information from your environment. We've got the tried and true approach of creating a network scan. I think that's as valid as it ever was, to create scans on schedules and really harvest a ton of information from your environment, whether it's using network ranges, subnets, CIDR blocks, or we want to be a little more focused and start to build out asset groups that we can do targeted scans against and stretch our resources just a little bit more. We also have ways to scan based on changes, based on triggers in your environment. So if you wanted to say, hey, let's trigger on new vulnerability coverage, Rapid7 releases new content that fits a certain software category, or something that we've assigned as an extremely critical vulnerability that you need to pay attention to right away, you can go ahead and run scans for those as we release that content. We'll do so on a daily basis as needed. We also, of course, have a way to pull in new assets. If you create a discovery connection from services or systems such as DHCP, Active Directory, VMware, AWS, Azure, as folks spin up new devices in those systems, we can pull them in and make them available for you to scan, whether it's on that repeating schedule or it's driven by one of these dynamic scans. We also have a way to populate your sites using what we have in-house as a research project, Project Sonar, which is a Scan the Internet initiative. And a lot of folks will talk to us and say, geez, I don't really know what's externally accessible or facing from my environment, whether we're talking about domain names or external subnets. We can pull information in from Project Sonar and scan based on new devices found, just making sure you understand that attack surface. On the far end, which we can also do is use our Insight Agent. A lot of folks have a love-hate relationship, kind of slanted a little bit more towards hate, I would say, in terms of agents. But sometimes the agents can be really helpful. And we kept that in mind when we built the agent in-house. We said it's got to be lightweight. It has to be, relatively inconspicuous. It can't be barking at people. It can't be blue screening. We don't want folks to notice it. So we built an agent that simply collects data from the endpoints it's installed on, and it sends it back to the Rapid7 cloud for assessment. So we put the bill for resources and any kind of noticeable effects that you have with potentially other agents, just to make sure that it's a better experience for everyone. And then you've got more ongoing continuous assessment of your endpoints, be it Windows, Mac, or Linux devices. So really nice ways across the spectrum to make sure that we're collecting information from your environment. And when we collect that, we start to assign risk to the vulnerabilities that we're finding. And I'd be the first to say that no scoring system is perfect. We get that. We're building towards having something as close to perfect, or at least making something that provides actionable output. You know, here's a targeted list of things you need to fix, and here's the order in which you need to fix them. And it really starts with a risk score. You've got, you know, in a lot of ways, you've got to have a number that might be arbitrary to your environment, but your goal is to make that number smaller. And in the past, when we focused on that number as number of vulnerabilities, it often led us astray. We were oftentimes reducing the number of vulnerabilities, but leaving the risky ones there because they were tied to harder remediations, or they were on web servers with, you know, mandated downtime or change control processes, things like that. So if I look at our vulnerabilities page, we see, and I'll pick on one of the WannaCry CVEs here. You've got your vulnerability. You've got an idea of the malware kits and exploits associated with that. As you can see, malware kits, we've got WannaCry, we've got the Eternal suite under exploits, and we've got a level of skill needed. We use a couple of different resources. We use our own in-house pen testing solution, Metasploit. We also use the exploit database, which has a lot of open source information on these exploits. Typically, stuff we find there is going to be expert level. You need to know what you're doing, versus something that we can rank in Metasploit as, hey, you know, this is a novice or intermediate level exploit because it's really easy to do. Sometimes it's a couple pushes of a button or two, and we're rolling. So we understand how that vulnerability has been weaponized, because now we've got tons of vulnerabilities. They're not all created equal. Some are bad but don't have known exploits. Some might not be as bad, but they're so easy to pop that we want to raise that risk score so you know to target them. We also look at the age of the vulnerability. When was it published? When was it last modified? And we'll give you a 0 to 1,000 real risk score on top of the CVSS, V2, and V3 scores, just so you have a few different ways to make sure that you're always removing stuff from the top. Get the riskiest stuff out of there. But out of the box, that doesn't tell you anything about your environment, of course. So we also want you to be able to go in and assign your own business context. And you can do that, amongst other things, with dynamic asset groupings, which are at the core just filtered searches that run every time new information is available. So these aren't locking things into place, which is really nice because there's no micromanagement of assets, whether you want to create a group that says, hey, put all my Windows devices together. I want to scan those on Monday nights, or put all my Windows devices with SQL installed into a group. Or even sometimes, put all my Windows devices with, I'll pick on another recent vulnerability, Bluekeep, put all of those into a group, and then I'm going to go ahead and build dashboards and reporting using this group, and I'm going to focus on that. Oh, I might be in a very clean environment unless I have a, you know what? Typos really hurt your searches. I can seek and destroy Bluekeep in my environment, get that group down to 0, and then remove it. So it's really all about what you want to do with that information. And with these groups, you can also assign asset criticality. I can say anything that has Bluekeep is a very high criticality device until I remove it. If I remediate this vulnerability, that CVE is no longer associated with the device, it drops out of this group, it drops its very high criticality tag, and we're back to business. What's important to note with the criticality tag is you can adjust the asset's risk score. Every asset has some number of vulnerabilities with scores associated. It has an overall asset score. You can use a multiplier on that score. You can say, hey, anything that is labeled very high, multiply by 2. Could be using these dynamic groups, fully automated. It could be a one-off where I say, hey, my CEO's laptop is the most important device in my network for whatever reason. All depends on what you want to accomplish with those. And that leads us back to dashboards, which are part of the prioritization process, whether it's looking for particular things, be it, outlying high criticality devices, lots of, really bad vulnerabilities, we'll say, or we're using one of our more recent but not brand new introductions, which is our threat feed dashboard, which combines from multiple sources to say, here's basically the worst of the worst in your environment. Here's a list of vulnerabilities that are being commonly or actively targeted in the wild, whether it's from vendor advisories or information shared via the Cyber Threat Alliance, or we have a global honeypot network known as Project Heisenberg. We also have a managed detection and response service. So if we see customers getting probed or attacked via certain vectors, we're able to share that information with users of our InsightVM solution. And what that allows you to do, as an example, is to go in and filter down as needed, but to also select vulnerabilities that maybe are a little more important to you, whether it's everything in this list. And again, these are present in your environment, and we're seeing them being targeted in the wild. Or select a couple things and push those over into a targeted remediation project. For sake of time, I'll show you what a completed project looks like, or an in-flight project, which is a list of solutions. So think about that vulnerabilities page we looked at a moment ago, which tends to be some of the more overwhelming information. A remediation project boils that down and says, here's the solution you need to run, in this case, some Java updates. We actually get a ton of vulnerabilities we can close, 607, with one single solution applied to these devices. And as I go through, we'll get a list of ones I've already remediated and those that are still remaining. But it's important because we can assign this out to teams, we can track that remediation. We're also able to, just because the concept of vulnerability management has grown beyond that endpoint scan, here are my assets, here are the problems associated with them. We want to make sure that you have ways to assess containers in your environment for folks who are rolling out or using Docker. We can find those images, we can assess them, we can tell you where they are. We also are able to perform cloud configuration assessment. So tying into your Amazon Web Services account and pulling a list of configuration issues, in this case defaulting to failed findings. Here are all the problems we need to go out and we need to fix, including any instructions for remediation on these devices and what caused us to actually fail. So growing beyond that, again, I keep saying scan, rinse, repeat on those endpoints, but just making sure we understand all the different components in your network and where that potential risk lies. And I made a note to myself to shut myself up at 2:10 for questions, but I'm happy to hang on if anyone has any.
Yeah, cool demo. Of course, I always love seeing the live demos, and especially like I mentioned, love the cool UI. So while we do some Q&A, I'm going to just pop up this poll question for the audience. It says, what additional information would you like about the Rapid7 solution? And I'll just leave that up here while we do some Q&A. So let's see. First question for Justin. They're asking, can you explain the type of reporting? What kind of reporting is available with InsightVM?
Yeah, definitely. So we've got a variety of reporting types. We actually have the ability, I hid one on another tab, and I'm sorry I didn't show it, but it was our latest release in the form of an executive report that gives you really high-level KPI, month-over-month trending. But it goes back to that idea of speaking a language that works for different teams. And one of the problems we've always struggled with, when I say we, I mean information security, is our downstream communication tended to be better. Here's a list of things to do. You don't necessarily want to share that with your CISO or CEO if needed. So we built reports to help with that. We've got a variety of PDF reports that are customizable. We've got XML and CSV output that facilitate a lot of integrations using that data, but it really depends on what folks want to see or how they want to use it. One of our most useful reports is a top remediations report, which is very much a PDF version of that project we just looked at, where you select a scope of assets and vulnerabilities, and we've got a little bit of back-end analytics that will run and say, all right, here are all the problems. What solutions will fix these, and what's my bang for my buck in terms of how I fix these? Here's a list of 25 things that you should do, the best 25 things to reduce risk in your environment. So we've got some nice reports that will help that as well, whether it's helping with remediation or it's tracking remediation, a little bit of something for everyone.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. Another question here that came in from James. He's asking if this is multi-tenant basically capable, if they were to put it in a MSP.
Yeah, so we do have the solution that we looked at was inside VM. That's something that we're exploring. We don't really facilitate MSSP with that at this time, but it's built on the backbone or the core tech of our Nextclose solution, which most folks would know us by, if not Metasploit. And we do offer an MSSP model with that, with full siloing. What's nice is that you can deploy scan engines. I know I didn't get much into the network architecture, but you can deploy scan engines as needed into customer environments and have them communicate back out to a single aggregate console, at which point, again, the information can be siloed down. We also see a lot of programs that do what I call pseudo multi-tenancy or pseudo MSSP, where you're just relying on role-based access to separate things. And that's pretty popular for organizations with a lot of subsidiaries where they want to keep things separate but together, if that makes sense. So there's a few different options definitely for that. That's where we like to get creative too and have those conversations. Hey, what are you trying to do? Let's mold to your vision. And we're happy to have those conversations.
Nice, nice. Another question here, Morgan, is asking if the reports can be easily customized.
Yeah, so the reports, I mentioned PDF reports, right? Those are modular by nature. So whether you want to add and remove chunks of those are a little more, what you see is what you get in terms of the pieces of the report, but we see a lot of people kind of shuffle those around and put together some nice reporting. We also, for the other output, we've got, the CSV, XML style outputs are fully customizable. We've got the ability to run SQL queries against the database with a published data model for folks who are really getting into the weeds and they want to really, pull very specific information that might not have been surfaced in different reports. So that's something that we can do as well. We also, I didn't, for sake of time, get into it. We've worked really hard on something that's in preview now, which is our query builder. It's not, 100% going to replace SQL query export reporting, but we think it will for a lot of folks who are kind of forced there based on the type of data that they're pulling out, so that you can go in and just say, hey, here are the asset and vulnerability filters that I want. Show me everything that relates to them, and then I want to output that into some form of report as well.
Nice, nice. A follow-up question here on reporting. Can they be scheduled and run automatically?
Oh, of course, yeah. So, whether you want to run those on a set schedule based on a calendar, or you want to auto-generate when a scan is complete is another popular one, especially for those dynamic scans that I showed. Hey, we scan based on triggers in your environment. Once that scan's complete, we're going to generate a report and either make it available in your UI or send it out via email. You get some options for report automation as well. You can also use our API to fully script that out if you want to go to that level.
Nice, nice. Another question here. What about training? Would they need training on the tool? How do they kind of get started and learn about the tool?
I always like to say it's so easy that you don't need it. And that's not always the case. Training's a great idea. We've got a lot of resources right on our site, all the way from what's available there in terms of quick start guides and some training tips and advice, all the way up through 2 days, certification courses if you want to be a power admin of the solution. So I would definitely say, take a look at the site or reach out to our team, depending on your level of interest. If it's full self-serve, I just want to browse through your material. Our site, whether you go to rapid7.com/insightVM or our blog, which has a lot of really cool information about emerging threats and how to use products, et cetera. Definitely check those out. But we have various levels of training available.
Awesome. Well, Justin, I think that's all the time we have for Q&A, but it's been a really great presentation. Great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it so much, and I know it's a very quick 20 minutes on my end, so anyone who wants to have further discussion with us, please reach out. We'd love to do so.
Excellent. For more information, make sure you visit rapid7.com and sign up and give the solution a try for yourself. We appreciate all the great questions. And for more information, of course, also check out the handout that's available for download there in the audience console on the Rapid7 Insight VM solution that covers live vulnerability assessment and endpoint analytics. And with that, it's time to award our final gift card on today's event. That is going out to Teresa Hayden Martinez of New Mexico. Congratulations, Teresa Hayden Martinez of New Mexico. If you weren't a winner on today's event, sorry about that, but there's a lot more opportunities ahead. Just visit events.actualtechmedia.com. We have a lot more events coming up. We have our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. I want to remind you to follow us on LinkedIn for the latest and greatest goodness from Actual Tech Media, all sorts of news and interviews about enterprise tech. If you're a potential sponsor of one of our events, feel free to reach out at connect@actualtechmedia.com. We'd love to chat and have you on. And finally, I hope you'll visit events.actualtechmedia.com to register for our next EcoCast, which is all about Office 365 and Azure solutions on Thursday, October the 3rd. In fact, you'll be redirected to that right after we end today's event in your browser, so you can register for more events. I hope that everyone enjoyed the event. I know that I did. I learned a lot about enterprise security. Hope that you got a lot out of it as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the event today. It was a great event. We really appreciate and just love our audience and all the great feedback. So thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.